Bonjour, everybody. Hi, this is Neshi Lokotz. Welcome to the Mystery School on Thursday night, July 27th. And we have quite a show for you tonight. My co-hosts are Carl Franklin and usually Ortrun Franklin. But I'm going to let Carl explain that piece because he's got much more information than I do about that. But welcome, everybody, and we appreciate you joining us tonight. The show that we have planned for you tonight is a topic that I think that we all experience eventually, and that is how we view our belief systems, and as we go through them to find out if there's still a truth for us and how they support us, and what we keep and what we don't keep. Specifically, when it comes to our beliefs in a religious kind of way. And and I say that it's a challenging topic because it really does bring us right in front of your face, that you come to terms with some of the old beliefs and what you're willing to keep. But with that, I'm going to bring Carl on, and I'm going to be asking. Hi, Cindy Lynn. Those who are viewing with us, if you wouldn't mind doing something for us, and that is to share and to like the show. You know that Facebook is one of those elusive creatures. We just try to figure out how they want things to be done, and we do know for one thing for sure is that when we share and when we like, we end up in the newsfeed much more often, which means that people can find our shows more easily. So if you wouldn't mind doing that, I'm going to be doing this too. Thank you, Cindy Lynn. Look at this. Watch. Cindy Lynn shared. Thank you so much, Cindy Lynn. We appreciate that. And while I'm doing this, Carl, could you give us a little insight into Ortrun is usually with us, and so those who usually watch the Mystery School are going to wonder, where did Ortrun go? So if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about that.
Yes. As most of you perhaps know, Ortrun was an immigrant. She and her family were refugees after the end of World War II. And they lived on care packages. And they didn't get balanced nutrition, so her bones didn't form as they should have. And her ankle gave out on her right leg. It was wore out. She was down to bone on bone. And so she has gone through an ankle replacement. And if you have to have a joint replaced, the last one you want is the ankle, because the recovery period it's about a year for most people. So she's right now in a wheelchair, and she has to keep that leg elevated, and she can't put any weight on that foot at all. And in about another 3 weeks, she'll be able to start putting some pressure on it and start physical therapy. And it's fairly painful. So anyway, that's her situation at this point. I'm happy to report that I think she's doing very, very well in terms of her recovery. So thanks for asking about her. And if you would still keep her in your prayers, okay? Because that really it's very powerful.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for that, Carl. I know that there are a lot of people who are wondering, because it was shared on the pages, both at Star Nations and also at the Mystery School and your other website pages and that sort of thing, that she did have surgery. So thank you for that update. And certainly we'll keep her in our prayers. In fact, here is Cindy Lynn saying prayers for recovery and healing.
Thank you. Thank you, Cindy Lynn.
Yeah. So I'm just sharing it to one more place, and then I'm ready to go. You know what takes so much longer is because of the spelling on small keys. And then I have to back up and spell it correctly. There we go. There. So this evening, our topic that we are going to be talking about, sharing about, is it's really came from an idea that I had about, because we're in the month of July toward the end, but July here in the United States, we kind of relate it to independence and freedom, right? And I was thinking, well, how do we talk about spiritual freedom, spiritual independence? And when Carl and I spoke about the show, it was kind of nice the way that you kind of saw how, or felt how, this was going to be helpful to our audience, and that is to talk about belief systems. And we were specifically about religious belief systems and how sometimes parts of them, I should say, not the whole thing, but parts of them can be an interference to our soul growth. And so that's kind of how we settled on the topic. Now, Carl, when we first started talking about this, and you had said, about religious beliefs, how does a religious belief, how can that become an interference, a belief system like that?
Well, Neshi, I want to share some personal history. I was raised in a very devout Lutheran family. I mean, we were there every Sunday, all of my parents and all of my siblings. And after college, I'd worked in business a couple of years, and I felt a calling. And when I say calling, it was really a calling to go into the ministry. So obviously, I became a Lutheran minister.
Mm-hmm.
And everything was fine and dandy. But at one point, I got a master's in psychology while I was a minister, because they don't give enough background in counseling in seminaries. And one of the professors I had, he only had about 15 or 20 minutes that he spent on the subconscious. And he told us, he said, that's 85 to 90% of our brain. And it just really, that just like it was a ton of bricks hit me.
Yeah.
So we weren't given that just to carry around and not use. And look at what we can do with, the 10 to 15% that we do use. And I made a commitment to myself. I am going to learn to use as much of my brain as I can, including the subconscious. And it wasn't 6 months later, I was introduced to a gentleman. His name was Clarence Lavoie. He was in his 70s. And most of his adult life, he had been a Jesuit monk.
Mm.
And he left that order, and he was now earning his livelihood as a hypnotist in surgical theaters with patients that could not take anesthetics, which means he was able to get them down to a very deep level. Well, he was literally a lonely old man. He had not married, did not have family, and he came and lived with us for probably 6 weeks. And he put on a number of classes, and I was at every one of them. And that's when I began meditation. And as a Lutheran, they have a fixed set of lessons for each Sunday of the year. Mm-hmm. And an Old Testament lesson, an epistle lesson, and a gospel lesson. And that's what your service for that Sunday is based on. So as a good Lutheran minister, I would read the lessons through 2, 3, 4 times. And then I would put myself into meditation. Mm-hmm. And I would ask, Father, what do you want these lessons to say to your people? And bam, immediately I would have the sermon topic. Mm-hmm. I would turn on the dictaphone and the sermon would come through me, not from me. And it was coming from a much higher level than anything we ever got into in seminary. Mm-hmm. So anyway, after a couple of years, I had gone so far beyond Martin Luther. And there was a small portion of the congregation that was growing with me, but the majority, they weren't ready. Mm-hmm. So it was time to leave. Mm-hmm. So I lost my vocation, my income, and at the same time, I also went through a divorce. So it was my midlife crisis, if you will, yeah. My menopause. And a couple of years after that, then Ortrun and I got married, which was just an absolute blessing because we've traveled the path together. Mm-hmm. And right from the get-go, when we at that point, we moved to Grand Rapids, and we were thrust right into the spiritual metaphysical community and have been an active part of it for these 40, over 40 years now.
Uh-huh.
It's been absolutely wonderful. But in order to go beyond what I had believed up to that point, the first, I'm going to say 35, 36 years of my life, I had to get rid of a lot of the beliefs that I had believed ever since I was a child. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Because I had gone so far beyond traditional Lutheran beliefs. You can't be a Lutheran minister if you go beyond Martin Luther. And that's true of any minister, of any denomination, or any priest.
Mm-hmm.
And not only in Christianity, but you can't, the teachings of the founder of any religion are the ceiling that you cannot go beyond.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're a religious person, you're going to have a challenge, because you're going to hit that ceiling. And if you have an awakening, that is, you start to move into a spiritual, and I'm going to say metaphysical direction, you're going to very quickly outgrow what you've been taught.
Yes.
And for some people, that's going to be scary.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to say, I don't really experience fear, hardly ever. And so it wasn't scary. It was really like an adventure.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I recognize now that I'm not capable of knowing what you would call the truth.
Mm.
But it's all right, because I don't want the truth. Because when you have the truth, your mind is closed. There is no further growth in that area.
Oh. Okay.
So what I have just a plethora of possibilities.
Yeah.
And
So,
some are really strong possibilities, probabilities,
uh-huh.
and others, well, maybe, but I doubt it.
Yeah.
Okay, which means that I have to keep my mind open.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to be listening to what I'm being given. And when I say being given, some of that comes from what I read, but a lot of it comes from my own meditation. It's coming from my spirit family.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my realizations, do you know where your answers for prayer come from?
From the Creator.
Well, they come from our spirit family.
Yes. Yeah.
Our spirit family are spirit beings that are working personally with us.
Mm-hmm.
And one of their jobs is, when we pray, usually our prayers have a request.
Mm-hmm.
They're the ones that answer it.
Okay.
Yeah. And if they don't have the answer, they have the contacts to get the answer.
That's right. That's right. And one of the things that I know is that when we make the request, when we make the prayer, is to open it up to all of our spirit family, all of our spiritual team, not just one or two, but the entirety of our spiritual family. Because if we don't ask them, it's really hard for them to be able to help us if we don't ask for it.
Well, they're not allowed to interfere. Right. So you're right. It's almost impossible for them to help. Mm-hmm. But if we ask, yes, then that gives them permission to do whatever we're asking for. Right. So, but I always qualify what I ask for, if it be for my highest good. Mm-hmm. Because sometimes I don't know. It could be detrimental to me.
I know. I do that caveat too, and also with grace and ease.
There you go. That's good. Good.
Yeah, but I would like to also add that I'm very grateful that you shared that story with us, because I think that there may be some of our listeners who think that because when you said you were a Lutheran minister, it's like that you automatically have another level of understanding, right? And then you saying that you went through the questioning of your belief systems around that. And it's not just Lutheran, because I tell you what, going through my cultural beliefs, the traditional Native American religion beliefs, it takes a while to sift through them and to really to ask, is this still a truth for me? Was it never ever a truth for me? How does this serve me? And you're right. There's times when you really don't. Do I really need to go there? Because it's almost like you're opening up a Pandora's box.
You literally are. Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah. So when you first realized that your belief systems needed to be expanded or clutter cleared, what was that like for you when you first realized that? Because that might help some people who are in that spot right now.
You first of all need to discern what no longer resonates with you.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the things that I've gone through is, well, let me start with some of this. And I'm not anti-Christian, and please don't hear me that way.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the basic, I believe, misinterpretations of the Bible. Well, let me back up. The Bible itself, the Christian church teaches, is the Word of God.
Mm-hmm.
Well, do you know who God is? The Old Testament God is a tribal God of the Jews.
Right.
And the New Testament, St. Paul just had a fight with the disciples to get them to accept the fact that maybe God is a God of all people. He became a planetary God.
Mm-hmm.
Not so much for the disciples, because they were so steeped in their tribal God that most of them weren't able to make that jump. But now with science, with astronomy and so on, to me, God is a God of a universe.
Mm-hmm.
And the scientists, the astrophysicists and astronomers are now telling us that our universe has somewhere between 2 billion and 1 trillion galaxies, with each galaxy having between 1 and 2 billion stars. And most of those stars have solar systems.
Mm-hmm.
Well, oh my gosh. That is so far beyond the concept of the people in biblical days. Wow. Okay. So the Bible is the Word of God. Well, who's God?
Right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, there's a lot of wisdom, and I still draw heavily on the Bible, but mostly I draw on the words and actions of Jesus. And I still believe that he is the most highly evolved human being that has ever walked on the face of the earth. So I have a lot of love and respect for him.
Mm-hmm.
But the first big stumbling block is the Bible's or the Christian's interpretation of the story of Adam and Eve. And I want to preface that by saying that was the belief. The original sin is the meaning of that story. And that was a belief in Jesus's day. That's Judaism, as you recall, was a sacrificial religion.
Yes.
God needed sacrifice to forgive sins.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was only natural that the disciples saw Jesus as a sacrifice for human sin. Okay?
Right.
But I'd like to explore another interpretation of that story with you.
Yes,
okay?
Please.
Adam and Eve were, in many ways, like infants and young children. And they were full of curiosity. There's so much love and in them. But the whole world was someplace to play.
Mm-hmm.
They had no responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
They had no concept that what they did could be hurtful. Okay. And they are representative of humanity waking up when they ate the fruit of the tree. And it's interesting, they ate from the tree of knowledge, the knowledge of good and evil.
Mm-hmm.
When humanity reached that point, they recognized that everything that they think, say, and do carries with it a consequence. And that was the meaning of that story.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with sin. It's that they learned that there is a law of cause and effect, and we live in a world of duality, and we have free will.
Yes.
But you can't escape the consequences.
Right.
And
Right.
that's the meaning of the story.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And that's where the Jews are today. They rejected what they believed back in Jesus's time. They think we Christians have really screwed up the meaning of that story. And here it's in their holy book, all right? But it's not it's not the story itself, it's how we interpret it.
Yes, I agree.
But when you do that, then why did Jesus die on a cross? Okay.
Yeah. Well, and to balance out the karma, right? That it's one way to look at it is to balance out the karma for humanity, so that we kind of had a clean slate to move forward. That's one perspective of that. The other, to me, is about ascension.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. You want another one?
Yes, please. Don't you just love this, guys? Go.
I'm going to draw on the Urantia book here, all right?
Okay.
Okay. According to the Urantia book, Jesus' real name is Christ Michael. Mm-hmm. And Christ Michael is the creator of our universe.
Okay.
All right? Mm-hmm. And Father and Christ Michael, all creator sons, are made out of the consciousness and energy of Father God and Son God. Mm. Okay? And when Father God, in essence, taught the Son, creator sons, how to create, and when he came here, Christ Michael had basically only known perfection. All right? Mm-hmm. He came from a place much, much, much higher than heaven even.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So Father God strongly recommends to his creator sons that they get to know their universe from the inside out as well as they know it from the outside.
Okay.
All right. Uh-huh. And he recommends that they go through 7 initiations to do that. Mm-hmm. And for each initiation, they turn over control of the universe to their second in command and become a creature in the universe.
Okay.
7 different times. Mm-hmm. And Christ Michael, which was normal, became a creature at a much, much higher level than we're at. Mm-hmm. Okay. And when he fully understood that creature and that creature's view of the universe, then he would go back to being the overseer of the universe that he created. Well, his 7th and final initiation was here on planet Earth as Jesus the Christ.
Uh-huh.
All right. And so he's completed his work here. And for the 7th initiation, Father God recommends that they go through the full life cycle, because the life cycles are really very short here. Mm-hmm. And he did that, came in as an infant and went through the death process. Mm-hmm. And if you read in the Synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, the events of Holy Week, Jesus planned the whole thing. He arranged his own crucifixion.
Yeah.
And why did he do that? Well, it was time to leave, and he had to pick how to exit. Mm-hmm. And if he was going to have a resurrection, if it was going to be believed, he had to have a public execution. Uh-huh. He had to have thousands of witnesses. Mm-hmm. So he planned it. And if you'll recall, on Good Friday, after the dinner, he sent Judas to let Caiaphas, the chief priest, know where he would be. Caiaphas wanted him arrested, wanted him dead, uh-huh. because he was literally going to create a civil war if this continued, which would have been the demise of Judaism, because the Romans would have just obliterated them.
Right.
So anyway, he sent Judas to tell Caiaphas where he would be alone and it's dark, and where he could be peacefully arrested.
Mm-hmm.
If he arrested them with the crowd was around, there would have been a riot that would have created literally. Yeah. Okay. So Jesus set this whole thing up, and he played Caiaphas, so Caiaphas could do what he wanted to do. All right. Mm-hmm. So thus he had his crucifixion, and he knew that with a crucifixion followed by a resurrection, and he knew he could do this. I mean, he'd raised 3 other people from the dead, and Lazarus was dead so long his body was stinking. Okay. Yeah. So he knew he could do this, and that had never been done before. It's never been done since. Mm-hmm. He was ensuring that his teachings and his works would be remembered for millennium.
Yes.
And had he not left some other way, it's likely what he had said and did would have been remembered for hundreds of years and then kind of faded into history. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I think that was what I'm reading into his crucifixion.
Right. And that makes so much sense to me, because even from the Potawatomi culture point of view, is that we believe that the soul already knows our exit, and that we plan it out 4 years. We start 4 years before we actually leave. And so there's things that, if hindsight was 20/20, those of us that were, relatives that left here on earth, that if we look back, we can see the different decisions that were made and how it led up to their walking on. And and so I totally get that.
Well, another question that is raised, all right, if our universe is these literally trillions, multi-trillions of planets, why did he pick Earth?
Yeah.
And
vast selection. And
yes. What are the odds? And the reason I think he did that is because Earth had already volunteered to play this role of the ascension, which is to benefit the entire universe.
Yes.
And he wanted to help prepare us, and he laid an energy base of love while he was here. Mm-hmm. And also, he wanted to help us in our spiritual growth. He told us, "Do you not know that you are God?" Mm-hmm. Now, most Christians today, well, that's blasphemy. Well, sure, it came from Jesus. The psalmist in the 82nd Psalm said exactly the same thing. You're God. Okay. And then he told us, everything that I can do, you can do, and even more.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. And when Jesus, and he showed us how to do that. Mm-hmm. When he said, my Father and I are one, he wasn't referring to God in heaven, but that's how the church interprets it. He was referring to the fact that he had merged with his divine essence, which is his own soul.
Yes.
And our soul is a fragment of the Creator. Mm-hmm. He had become one with the Creator. And right. He was 100% fully man. Uh-huh. All right. He came back when he left his memory behind just like we did. All right. Uh-huh. And anyway, when we merge with our soul, then we will be able to do all that Jesus did and even greater.
While in a physical body.
Exactly. Just as he was in a physical body.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I got to stop just for a second, because they're chatting it up in the chat room. Because there's something that was said here. I got to scroll down a little bit. Here's Cindy Lynn. Cindy Lynn is saying, I've always felt closer to Jesus, but struggled with most religious contradicting their beliefs with their actions. We understand what you speak, Cindy. Yes. Yes, and isn't that a form of a rule of thumb about integrity? Is that your actions and your words are the same? You know, that's about integrity. And Rob is saying, isn't it more rational to believe whatever anyone's claiming to have authority over me says to me? Admittedly, it's usually that I am to serve them without question, but it isn't the logical reward for such wisdom.
Rob, I'm with you 100% on that. Yes.
Yeah. Uh-huh. And let's see, I got to scroll up a little bit. Hey, look who joined the show. Hi, Ortrun. I'm so glad you could be with us tonight, Ortrun. All right. Here's one from Rob. He says they ended up having a squashed rebellion less than a century later anyway.
Exactly. Yes.
You know, and there's a reason why there's so much conflict in that area of the world too. And here's another one, Rob. Aren't there other crucified saviors amongst the solar system religions?
Rob, not that I am aware of. You may have knowledge beyond mine, and that's highly probable.
And then Cindy Lynn, Earth School, I heard, is one of the hardest and faster ways, I think she means, for our souls to grow and ascend.
Cindy Lynn, I agree with you fully there. I think it's one of the most difficult. And I want to back that up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
There are between 1 and 2 million different life forms on our planet.
Yes.
And we humans are the only ones that have created governments, economies, religions, a culture to the extent that we have. The only ones that have created technology, cities, worldwide transportation and communication, the only ones that raise their own food, the only ones that have the ability to leave the planet.
Yeah.
We are the gods of the planet. We're the only ones that have the ability to pollute the waters and the air. Okay. And we have the responsibility for the planet. Okay. So yes, we are the gods that Jesus spoke of. And collectively, we have a tremendous amount of power.
Yes.
And individually, if we can join our energy with the energy of our spirit family, and we can even join it with the entire angelic realm, we're almost limitless in what we're capable of doing individually.
Yeah.
And as we come together in a group, that energy is multiplied by the number of those people. And I think it's multiplied by the square of those numbers, not just numerically.
Wow, that's like huge.
It is.
So, you know, there's also, I think, Carl, that when we get to the point that we're questioning our belief systems, what we grew up with, what we're going to let go, what we're going to keep, right? There comes a time when we get to that juncture of accepting and understanding that we're that spiritual being having that physical experience, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then I think that there's another layer to that. And that's when we realize the full realization that we are a universal being, not just a human being, but a universal being. And then we get to actually tap into and reach for, claim that place that we have with the spirit, with our spiritual families, with the angelic realm, that whole spectrum. And that's what they mean to be unlimited. My 2 cents.
Well, one of the realizations that's been coming in strong for the last year, Yeah, I'm a citizen of the United States,
Mm-hmm.
but even more fully, I'm a citizen of the earth. And even more fully than that, I'm a citizen of the universe.
Mm-hmm.
Because the divine creator within me, that is my soul, is an aspect of the universal creator.
Mm-hmm.
And the astrophysicists are now saying that the universe follows all of the rules that govern a hologram.
Yes.
Okay. And a hologram is made up of innumerable pixels of white light or of light. All right.
Mm-hmm.
And they have found that they can take any single pixel of light in a hologram, and if they enlarge it sufficiently, it contains the whole hologram.
Yes. Yes.
And I think our soul is a microcosm of the entire universe.
Right.
And when I had an out of body experience and was standing at the tunnel of light that led to the heavenly realm, the strongest emotions I've ever felt, but the strongest emotion was the feeling that I'm one with everything. I'm one with the whole universe, and the whole universe is within me.
Mm-hmm.
And from that time on, that's been my truth.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. You know, there's something that I shared years ago on when we were still doing Blog Talk Radio, and that was how I got my medicine dress. There was a place in there at the very end of that vision, at the very end of it, when I was shown back into the room to meet with the old woman. That's what they called her. When I walked into this space, she was floating about 3 or 4 feet off the ground. And she said to me, "Come to me, child." And so I walked over to her. And when I looked into her eyes, it was the first time I'd ever truly felt unconditional love. And what that did to me afterwards, because that was in 1999 when I share it, I still get kind of reclept about it, because I remember that feeling of unconditional love. And when I had that, I could literally feel being a part of everything
Yes.
in
Yeah.
its entirety.
Yeah.
And it was just a moment, but it's a feeling that you never forget.
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think all of those experiences are a part of our awakening, taking us another step higher in consciousness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, another thing that I've realized is Christian churches have a strong belief that if you're going to be saved, you have to believe that Jesus died for your sins.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And you have to have the right beliefs. And I now know that that's not true.
Mm-hmm.
What determines who we are and where we go after we die is the level of our consciousness.
Yes.
And consciousness it's universal. Everything in the universe has consciousness. And when Jesus said, "In my Father's house," referring to heaven, there are many rooms.
Mm-hmm.
And when we lay our physical body aside and we go into the heavenly realm, where we are in that realm is going to be based on our consciousness.
Yes.
So if, regardless of what a person's religious beliefs might be or might not be, if they're functioning out of a consciousness of love, of peace, of joy, a consciousness of at-one-ment, of helping one another, they're going to go to a very high level of heaven because they're functioning at a high level of consciousness here. And we have the same level of consciousness without our physical body that we have with it.
Yes.
Okay. So I think there are going to be many, many good Christians that are going to be at high levels because those that live their faith who are living love, which is the basic energy, I believe, of the entire universe.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I've got to jump over to the chat room because there's a couple people here that I think they would really like to have their comment shown. One of them is somebody that's very close to you. Ortrun says, Jesus' story has been told 17 ways, 17 different ways. She says, I believe that refers to the different philosophies. Yeah. 17 different perspectives, right? And Rob says, you cannot come to know the universe by only studying one planet. A quote by Miyamoto Musashi. I think they said that. Musashi. I think I said that right.
Excellent.
Yeah. And then, let's see, got to scroll up. Cindy Lynn, she said, I felt the feeling of unconditional love for the first time at Spearfish Canyon, South Dakota, the year after my husband's passing. Oh, yeah. And it's true, Neshi, you never forget that feeling. No, it's, and I'm going to say something about this, Cindy Lynn, is that because we and others who have had that similar experience is embedded now in our blood and our bones, in our DNA, that memory. And so we get to pass that on to our descendants. And I'm writing about that for the August issue. It's the legacy. Sometimes we realize what that legacy is, and other times it's an intangible that we sometimes don't recognize it as what it is, and that is a legacy. And so, we talk about the historical trauma. We talk about the different traumas that we pass on to our descendants, but we also pass on the good stuff. And our descendants are going to know what it's like to feel unconditional love. And Carl's descendants, his grandchildren and their grandchildren, are going to know what it's like to be a part of the entire universe. And it's moments like that makes it all worth the challenge that comes with sifting through those beliefs and what you're going to keep and what you're not going to keep.
I've got a wild story for you.
Okay.
I had a lady, she contacted me from Indonesia.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a middle-aged lady, a mature, very wise person. And she said she and her extended family are descendants of the emperors of China, and they ruled for, I think, about 3,000 years. And she says some of the emperors were very good, loving people, and others were just horrible and were responsible for millions of deaths. And she said her extended family that's here on Earth now is going through really, really rough times. Mm-hmm. And that has been going on for centuries now. And she said, we feel that we are paying the price for the karma created by our ancestors.
Mm-hmm.
And she wanted help in dealing with that. And I refused to help her.
Yeah.
But I said, I will teach you how to help yourself. All right. In making that decision, I had started working on it. And oh my God, I couldn't handle it was just Ortrun being a sensitive. She said, you've got to stop because the energy it brought into our home, neither one of us wanted. Yeah. So anyway, she's been working on that for over a year now. And she has cleared, the last I checked, it was about 60% of that karma. Now, in doing that, she is not only helping her Earth family here, but she is clearing that karma from those that committed those actions.
Yes.
Now, Ortrun is doing the same thing for her family.
Mm-hmm.
And her family went through World War I, World War II, and there was a lot of pain and a lot of suffering.
Mm-hmm.
And much of the pain that she feels she's experiencing, and I agree with her on this, is coming from her family, the pain that they experienced during their lifetime here. And by clearing that out, she is literally changing the DNA they will pass on when they come back.
Yes.
The same thing you're saying.
Yes.
And
Yes.
we do have that ability.
Mhm.
And that's part of our ability, I'm going to say, being the gods that we are, that we can do that.
Right. And we believe, and culturally, we believe that when we heal, well, actually, anything we do affects our descendants for 7 generations. And I believe that it also goes back to our ancestors as well when we do that kind of healing.
Yes.
That we also heal them for 7 generations. And at some point it gets a little convoluted. If you believe in past lives or parallel lives, it gets a little convoluted because sometimes you're the person who actually started this mess, that
Yeah.
soul.
Yeah.
And so you get to clean it up.
But to me, the point is that we have power that goes way beyond not only our past lifetimes, but in doing that, we are helping to shape the future.
Mm-hmm. Yes. That's true. That's very, very true. So, Carl, when you're doing life scripts, can you sense in those life scripts when there's been those changes made, those shifts in an energy field with that person, when they have made it through, let's call it an initiation, when, for instance, when they do change their belief system?
Okay, not the when, but I can tell if they have gone through that. Yes, that becomes very, very apparent in that.
Mm-hmm. How so?
Well, just by their energy, number one, but number two, in a life script, one of the questions we ask is during your awake time, what percentage of that time are you in the third dimensional level of consciousness, the fourth and the fifth? And the transition over the 25 years I've been doing that, the amount of time spent in the third dimension is about 1/2 what it used to be.
Oh, okay.
And the amount of time in the fifth dimension has increased from high single digits, maybe 12% was the max. Today it's between 32 and 42% of the time.
Really?
So it's increased 300%.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the amount of time in the fourth dimension has been pretty steady, right around 50% plus or minus 5%, because that's the time we're spending transitioning, changing our beliefs, our behavior. So,
yeah. I love this conversation. Don't you guys? Don't you just love this? Because now now that you said those numbers, I've got all these questions in my head.
Fire away.
One of the things that I learned last month when you were on my show with me, you and Ortrun, and you had said something about, because we were talking about the ego, and you had said something that had light bulb moment for me, and that was about how the fourth dimension, that it's that transition place, right? And the feeling of the chaos, because people are learning souls are remembering, I should say that better, remembering how to hold that energy for longer periods of time. So they're not sliding back into third dimension, but spending much more time in the fourth, and then making that transition into the fifth, right?
Yes.
One of the things that light bulb moment for me was about how we practice the law of attraction and where we ground that item, whatever it is, to the earth plane, because we ground it through our bodies. It just doesn't, when it comes to us and we don't ground it, it disappears. It doesn't manifest, right? And so I was thinking, well, if we're much more intentional, we should be saying, I'm grounding this to the fourth dimension. So I learn how to hold this energy field more steady, right? So it's not wobbly. Then I'm actually mastering how to hold this energy in the fourth dimension, so that when I slide into the fifth dimension, my tools are much more sharper. I don't know. I don't know a word for that. But
you're more aware of them.
yes, yes. And, the fourth dimension, I see us really applying our skills, applying our gifts. We're not practicing anymore, that we actually have to do it. Right?
Right. Absolutely. Yes. Yes.
So I've been passing that on to my clients and talking about it in different live stream shows and that kind of thing, because I think that was a nugget, a golden nugget that I thought we have to recognize this, and if we say it often, other people can take it in and see if it resonates with them. How is it? How does that work for them? So I thought I'd just mention that.
Thank you. Good. Yes.
Yeah. So I'm going to check the chat room here because they're very active. Okay, so Cindy Lynn says, I need to find out how to do that. Which part, Cindy Lynn? Is it the grounding to the fourth dimension, or which part were you doing? And Rochelle is saying a lot of good stuff. Yes. Yes, it is. And I can just imagine that there's some people, parts of this is blowing their mind. It's like, what? Really? Yeah, and I was actually asked, Cindy Lynn, this is what she's saying. She's saying, yes, thank you, I'm going to try that. I was actually asked by Jill Conrad over in, I think she's in New York. She was saying, well, how do we do that? How do we ground it? She says, we've never talked about this piece. How do you ground it? And I said, I just go at it very simply, very, very simply, is that when it comes to me, and I put, for instance, my car, I know that it's a materialistic thing, but I had been wanting a hybrid for so long, and it came, right? And so I was grateful for it, number one, and thankful, and I am grounding this to the fourth dimension. I just said it out loud. It's my intention. Some people will probably want to attach a ceremony or something to that, but I really think that it can be as simple as the intention. What do you think, Carl?
Well, I think we'll each find our own way to do that. And I'm getting an echo here.
Oh, I don't hear it.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I intention that it become a part of the cells in my body. It become a part of my mental and my emotional and my soul body.
Mm-hmm.
And so I become one with it.
Okay. And it's that simple. Yeah.
I don't deal with the dimensions at all on that. Just
It's just with you.
Yes.
Okay. That's even more simple. It's even more simple. Yeah, maybe it's because I still have that curiosity. And part of it is the mental mind, it's like, how did that happen?
Yes.
How did we use that?
Well, I want to get back to our main topic here.
Yes, please. Okay.
We haven't covered.
Uh-huh.
If you're going to go through spiritual growth, you have to be open of mind, and it is most helpful if you do it with your heart mind. Don't just do it mentally, but it needs to be done emotionally too. And one of the traits that is present throughout the universe is the trait of curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that we as humans have more of that than any of the other life forms on the earth. And use your curiosity. And in your meditative state, particularly, ask questions and be open to hear the answer.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the limitations that religion can impose upon us, or that are, if we've got, quote, the truth, we have to be able to hear the answers that are given.
Yes.
And information comes in at levels of consciousness. And if our level of consciousness is lower than the information is coming in at, it's going to go right over our head. We're not going to hear it.
Mm-hmm.
So to get yourself to the highest level of consciousness that you can in a meditative state, ask the question and be open of mind and heart to receive.
Right.
Okay. And that's when, for me, that's when the aha information comes.
Yes. Yes.
And I love it.
Me too. Me too. And I've also suggested to people that, and there's many ways to do that, is to literally get in, to be in your heart. When you go into meditation and you're asking the question and you're listening, is to be in your heart, to be at that frequency of love.
Okay, this is going to be, you ready for a wild one? Sure. We talk about our high heart.
Yeah.
Have you ever had a definition for the high heart?
Well, from what I understand, and this is the balance between the mental mind and the emotional heart. And so it is a place of balance, a deep place of compassion and balance.
Can I share another possibility with you?
Absolutely.
It is the heart of our soul.
Uh-huh.
It is the heart, and our soul is our Christ itself.
Mm-hmm.
So it is literally the heart of the indwelling Christ within us.
Mm-hmm.
And to connect that heart with our physical heart and with our conscious and subconscious mind.
Right. Right. Oh my gosh. All right. So, on the medicine wheel, and there's many different interpretations of the medicine wheel, but the one that I believe in and that I live my life by is when we're moving from east to west, and that is our earth walk, right? And we're moving from mental thought, the spirit of air, mental thought, and we're making our way to the west, and that is emotions and water. Okay, and it's the life lessons along the way is where we're learning how to balance our mind and our heart. And there's mastery in that, because you're literally mastering that aspect of what we call two-leggeds, and there is, in the center is where the creator dwells. And for respite is where we go to integrate our lessons.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. So basically, it's just another way, a story to explain how our intention is to be in that high heart, yes, to be in that balance, to be in that our soul self. Yeah. And we're constantly learning and taking our wisdom that we gained and walking the red road, which goes from the south to the north. And that means that we're taking our wisdom back to our community. And so we're sharing it. We're in service too.
I think there's so much innate wisdom in the native teachings. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
I think
it's a difficult life to walk sometimes, but let me tell you, when you have these kind of gems, it's worth it. That's for sure.
Yeah. I think in so many ways they were so far ahead of the Europeans that came.
Well, the thing is that I have a theory about that too, is that if we go back far enough, everybody comes from a tribal nation, indigenous to some continent, right? And with the Europeans, it's just that their evolution took another path. And so, and I think that's all divinely led too, for us to be able to learn what we came here to learn. Some call it the grand experiment, right?
Yeah. And really it is. Yeah. Well, this has been marvelous.
Yeah. We're at the top of the hour. Thank you so much, Carl. I couldn't wait for tonight because I knew we're going to be sharing some.
We got to go way out again, didn't we,
I
Ned?
know. I love it. I love it. So, and I just wanted to thank everyone for being with us tonight that's in the chat and who will be watching the recorded video. We appreciate that. And I'm going to ask that you, even in the recorded video, when you're watching it, please share it, because the more we share it, the more this information is going to reach the people, the souls that are searching for it.
Yes.
And so it's just another way that we can serve our community, right? Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And thank you, Carl. I'm so glad that
thank you for the opportunity.
We get to be together every month. And thank you to Ortrun for allowing us to do this time together, Carl and I, without adult supervision. Because Ortrun keeps us on target. On task, and we love it, Ortrun, and we miss your meditation. So when you're well enough and you can come back, can't wait for your meditations.
Yes.
All right, and with that, we appreciate you guys and enjoy the rest of your evening, and we'll see you next month for the Mystery School at the last Thursday of the month.
And please enjoy your life and be giving and loving.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And accept our love.
Exactly. Good night, everybody.